All right, welcome back. We are here. We're here at the 2022 Edison Awards, Meet the Innovators Day. We've had some great discussions. This guy coming up has some tough acts to follow, but I have a feeling he's going to deliver for us. Carmichael Roberts, you spend a little time with him, and you will see people that are trying to recycle cooling water from industrial processes, purifying it, and put it back in the system. Right there in the front, there they are. You'll find a company that is forging steel without any carbon dioxide. You'll see a company that is creating these crazy-looking nimble robots that can be used in food production. And you're going to go to a company that just got $1.8 billion in venture capital money to get us finally to fusion. And to say fusion will change the world is a bit of an understatement, I think, in some ways. So this is our Edison Achievement Award winner, Carmichael Roberts, who could spend his VC life looking for the next app for an iPhone, but instead is doing tough tech. You're looking at the big challenges, and you're looking at ways to make them a reality. And so for that, you are getting this award, and we're glad to have you with us. So Carmichael, your story is a fascinating story to me. And why don't we begin at the beginning? You began in East New York, Brooklyn, in a housing complex, and kind of tough streets, and parents got divorced early. You kind of grew up, sort of bounced around from place to place. Tell us about that and how that has made you, in many ways, a better person today.
That is a great way to start, in my opinion. Like, people always ask me of all the things I can talk about, and I got a lot of things to talk about. Like, I like to try to inspire people. So, you know, you're exactly right. I think if you kind of closed your eyes and kind of looked at what I'm doing today, and you asked what would his background be, not many people would think that there was a huge chunk of my life that I was in one of the roughest neighborhoods in the U.S. in New York, in Cypress Hills projects. You know, welfare, food stamps, bouncing around. I see some of my family members are here. You know, I was collectively property of the community, property of the family. I lived with lots of different aunts and uncles and so forth for many years, and I had an awesome childhood, I would say, from that standpoint, which would probably be surprising the most, because I always felt safe, and that's the key thing. You know, this whole feeling of, you know, are you in an environment that feels safe? And the safety is not so much that I felt safe that nothing bad can happen, but I felt safe in that the community wanted to deliberately look out for me. So
in spite of all that, you were an only child, parents divorced, you're kind of raised by extended family. Why do you think you still felt safe? That expression, "it takes a village," comes to mind. It seems like there was a village looking after you. What?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I can't say why, but I can say how. I can say, you know, I guess I could go ask the people, but you know, all along the way, you know, there were different people who I felt like they kind of adopted me as their little brother or their son, their grandkid, you know, the whole way around. And it was just one of these things where I was really fortunate that way.
You had to learn pretty quickly who you could trust.
Yeah.
How does that help you today? And how do you think you learned those lessons?
Oh, tremendously. So I would say, how does it help me? It's probably the biggest thing that I could learn as a young person. Just imagine, so Miles, you know, you and I, we talked about this before. Imagine being about 6 or 7 years old and being able to understand if you see a 15-year-old or a 25-year-old, whether you can trust them or not, and the importance in that environment to getting that right. And if you can perfect that, then as you grow up, you know, I love one of my good friends who's here, John Cropper, always talks about superpowers. If you can develop that into a superpower, what happens if you complement that with, you know, a tremendous education, experience in business and so forth? When I'm sitting in a room with entrepreneurs, whether I'm sitting in a room with some of the wealthiest people in the world, with some of the wealthiest companies, I have a really, really good understanding, you know, what makes them tick. You know, who are they? What kind of a person am I interacting with?
The expression I like to use is, you have range. You're a rangy guy. You could talk to anybody.
I feel that way, yeah. You know, I mean, I like to talk to anybody. You know, I love to give talks in parts of the world, parts of the country that, you may not see somebody that, that looks like me, or you may not see someone with my background. And so what's great is I leave almost always having made a set of contacts and connections that are invaluable. But more importantly, I leave with them, having them feel that I'm part of the community. That same kind of feeling that I had when I was little, and I could feel like I'm in a safe environment, well, it kind of flips around. I think they feel really safe around me.
Okay, so you went off on an improbable journey to Duke and Harvard and where you are today. In order to make that move, you had to have a couple of nudges along the way. I mean, I'm sure there were many forks in the road that you encountered, and I'm sure a lot of people who you knew when you were young took the wrong road. And you took the right road. How did that all happen for you? Did you have intervention from teachers, mentors? How did things go right?
I would imagine almost everybody who's today listening and part of this whole Edison Award can talk about, event, can talk about times in your life where someone's made a big difference. And the key thing is at that moment, can you tell whether to go left, right, up, down, sideways? I've had a lot of people at the right times offer me an opportunity. Sometimes it's not obvious in terms of how important the opportunity is. And sometimes at a time when it's really hard to make a decision to go in a particular path. I think the key thing is to get offered that opportunity. And then a lot of people ask me, what did I craft my career in some way to know where I would end up? No way. But I would say one of the things that I learned to be very good at is understanding whether to go left, right, up, down, sideways at times that were not obvious.
So you were playing the Price is Right.
Yeah, we talked about that. So my, I look at some of my family members that are sitting in the audience. I think about my grandmother and sitting there, how much she looked at the Price is Right, right? And I'm looking at my cousin right now, and he knows. We would sit there, and she would say, because it's Price is Right is one of these hopeful things. You think, oh my gosh, I'm going to win a car or something.
Go for the showcase, man. Yeah.
Exactly. So I remember, looking and saying, the ability to decide door number 2 versus, 1, 2, and the audience is screaming every other door and every other thing. But in life, there's a lot of that as well. There's a lot of noise that's around you to tell you what to do, and can you filter through that noise and hear the right answer and then make the right decisions when it's not obvious is important.
Okay, so you're still kind of a kid who's a little bit alone, but with some support and
a lot of support,
Yeah, all right, a lot of support. And in school, you had somebody who kind of led you on a course which got you to Duke. I know there's a kind of a long story here, but if you could tell people, because it is so important that along the way, all of us, we can always identify 2 or 3 teachers or mentors that really sent us on the right path. You've got a few of those that were very crucial for you. It'd be interesting. I think people would like to hear those stories.
Yeah, I had a retired college professor who, for some reason, decided to teach high school science. The high school was one where, if you retired from college and you did science, you can teach anything, like chemistry, biology. He taught mostly biology. And I remember him telling me, not asking me, telling me, you're not staying in New York. You're not going to stay in New York. You're going to go somewhere else. Where's your family? I said, well, down in the Carolinas. He said, we're going to look at these schools down there. They're called ACC schools. I didn't know what that was. My parents, by the way, I got back together. My dad got remarried, and I ended up, as I got older, moving back in with my father. And in this high school, this teacher just said to me, you're not going to stay in New York for school. You just need to get out. And I'm gonna put you in a 2-week, 3-week program in the summertime. Actually, it was at Clemson. I went to Duke. It's it's one of our, well, not really a rival because they would run over us in football these days. But I can't really say that too much. But nonetheless, healthy. But he sent me down there. He called up a friend and said, I want you to take them down in this program. And I went down there, and I came back having met all of these different TAs from who were freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, and all the different ACC schools. And then I ended up applying to a bunch of them.
What did he see in you, do you think?
That is a great question. He said to me flat out, I'm gonna say it in an unfiltered way. And that's not exactly PC in this way. So Dr. Sawyers was a sort of a white-haired, tallish white male, in his, probably late 60s, early 70s, and he said to me, Carmichael, I look at your people, and he's talking about black people, just to be clear, and he was like this with all folks. He would grab women and say, sometimes, and by the way, I got a couple of friends who would attest to it, who's here, right? I'm looking at one right now. And he had said, Carmichael, I look at you, and you're not like the stereotype of your people. You are different. Now, of course, he would get into loads of trouble, like saying something like in that way today.
You could have taken offense by that, too, really,
I know this is not good, but being honest with you, like, I was minorly offended by it, but majorly I found it humorous because he was kind of like this gregarious and constantly saying stuff like that, almost like, off the sitcom or something like that. But he meant it. What he meant more than anything was forget about the people. He said, I see something in you that I don't see. Forget about like your people. I see something in you that I don't see often, and I know the track that you could easily get into in New York from your background, and we're not letting that happen. And we're going to have you go and see something different and come back and tell me what you think. And when I came back, he right away said, you're going to apply to Duke.
So you get to Duke, and when did you realize chemistry was a thing for you? How did that happen?
So in order for me to afford Duke, I was on a work-study program. Like many of us were, I'd say a lot of them, ethnic minorities were on work-study programs. And I got excited my first few weeks like you do in college, and I forgot to sign up for a work-study. So all the jobs started to disappear. And I remember meeting my freshman advisor.
Wait a minute, so if you had taken a job in the cafeteria, we wouldn't be having this conversation?
Probably not, I don't know. I don't know.
So it's really good that you procrastinated, man.
Exactly.
Right, so go ahead.
I got lucky. So what ended up happening here is I remember talking to him, and he went through all my classes. He kind of looked and said, you look like you're in good order. Okay, I'll see you in a semester. You have any questions on the way out the door? And I said, yeah, and this was Dr. Palmer, I was just by happen chance, I had a chemistry professor who was my freshman advisor, who I know I can see some people who know Dr. Palmer as well, right? One of my good friends was here. And Dr. Palmer said to me, okay, good, see you in a semester. I said, wait, I got one question for you. He goes, what? I said, I need a job. And he said, you got to be kidding me. You're in the grad school. You're 18 years old. You're barely out of high school. I have graduate students. There's nothing I have for you. I said, well, I'll figure I'll ask. And I walked out the door for probably about 30 feet away, and I heard him in a deep voice say, Carmichael, come back for a second. Anybody in your family teach you how to wash dishes? So I was like, washing dishes? This man want me to go to his house and wash dishes for money. So I'm wondering, is that where I'm going? And he said, look, round bottom flasks, beakers, petri dishes, whatever the case may be. My graduate students complain that, we haven't invested in a way that we had an automated dishwasher. You could be that automated dishwasher. so I said, if you pay me,
put me in, coach, right?
Yeah, and so that was my introduction by accident. Because as a freshman in your first few weeks, you don't know what your major is. Most people don't. And so I wasn't a chemistry major. I just took that job.
Well, wait a minute. So you didn't, going in, you had just a little bit of understanding and interest in chemistry. You weren't really, that wasn't your pursuit necessarily. Right, yeah. But because you ended up washing beakers, that became your thing.
Yeah, I had, okay.
Talk about a twist of fate.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah. So you can imagine that just like anything in a job, so I end up washing glass room. What happens? 2 weeks into the job, graduate student grabs me and says, Carmichael, my hands are full. Can you help put some of this and do a little of that for a second? You've seen me do it a couple of times. You can do it. And then they look at me and they go, yeah, he could do it. And then, a month later, it's oh my gosh, I'm stuck at the supermarket. I got to get this thing turned off and turned on. Carmichael, you've seen it before. Just run it, set it up, and get it going. And about 3 months into this, I remember it was time for holidays, and Dr. Palmer came and said to me during a group meeting, he goes, you're basically working with graduate students doing graduate level research with us. You're part of the group, come over for the holidays. And, all of the people in that group were so different to me. Just think about the background I gave you. None of them had that. They had their own walks of life. And plus I was really young, but they loved me, man. They still send me messages today about how proud they are of me, and I tell them that they should be proud because they co-own, my whole thing, and we really got along.
So in a strange way, you found your tribe in such an unlikely place, didn't you? In a lab.
It was really, really odd that way, right? I mean, I really liked them. They were so different, and I kind of felt so comfortable working with them and doing that. And I just, through that osmosis, just said, I want to do chemistry.
So you felt like you belonged.
I absolutely felt like I belonged. Back to that, again, I can't say this is exactly what happened, but go back to that young kid who figures out in different communities, bouncing around in different places, not only how to fit in, but where you're safe, where you feel comfortable, where you feel really good. I felt the same way I would in the rough part of the projects. I felt the same way I felt in the chemistry department.
Okay, so you were a bit of a hustler in the good sense of the term.
I got a friend who says that all the time. Who's sitting there, who says,
"You're working it," and so you had some innate drive in there. Did you have an end goal in mind at that point, or at that point were you just chemistry was enough and pursuing that, and the fact that you were at Duke was enough, or what did you see at that point?
I think that was it. I think at that point I'm sitting there saying to myself, I'm at Duke. I'm a chemistry major. I'm doing well. I'm just going to close my eyes and follow my passion. I don't know exactly where it leads me. And this is an undergrad, And as a result, I kept my eyes closed for 9 years and ended up with a PhD in that department. so going all the way through, and it changed. I came a long way from that 18-year-old not knowing what he was doing.
So the next mentor we're talking about is the legendary George Whitesides, probably the most famous chemist in America, right? And you end up in his lab in Harvard just because you're Carmichael, right? You just kind of show up, and he said, "Yeah, would you wash some beakers?" I mean, what happened?
No, it's just the same way of folks, and I don't mean to call him out, but I am. In a second, I had someone on who was not that much older than me, but old enough. He was an assistant professor on my thesis committee. And interesting enough, he's actually sitting right there with his head down. No one right there, Eric. Eric Tan.
Yeah.
And Eric,
wave your hand, Eric.
Yeah, there you go. So Eric.
All right, Eric.
Eric calls me in one day. He said, "Carmichael, this is way too easy for you. I watched you through grad school. This is too easy." He said, "You just haven't been challenged, and you're smart, but you're not that smart." And he said, "You're not." And he said, "So I want you to go somewhere and really go where I guarantee you're not going to be the smartest, but you're going to really grow. And if you do this, you owe me, and I think the professor owes me." And he called up George Whitesides, sight unseen, like with me, and said, "As soon as this guy applies, I put my reputation on the line. Just take him. I don't care if you haven't talked to him, whatever. Just accept him." So I sent an email, and then Eric tricked me. He came to me and he said, "Hey, what the heck? No one, it's hard to get into that lab. Just send him an email and see what happens." So I said, "Okay." I spent 5 hours trying to fret over writing a 2-line, 3-line email to George Whitesides. and I remember
he didn't tell you that you were a cinch, right?
No,
you had no idea.
No.
Okay.
So I send this email off that evening, and I come back in the next morning. And I look, and it was like one of those, for those who are older, thinking about AOL, used to say, "You got mail." One of those things, right? It was one of those things, I could see it all bolded. And I said, I was thinking, maybe somebody else answered this email for this guy. And I looked, and it opened up, and he said, "Carmichael, congratulations. I can't wait to see you in June. You're in my lab." And by the way, for all the street smarts and hustling and everything, I was just an idiot at that point. I was so naive. I looked at this thing. I was dumbfounded. Couldn't believe it. Like, George Whitesides responded to me, and for those of you who don't know who George Whitesides is, Miles has got it right. He's like the most famous chemist, I think, in my opinion, in the last 30, 40 years, when you look at the combination of academia and industry impact. He's the most cited chemist, by the way, in the world. So I go down to Eric, who's not my thesis advisor, he's on my committee. Right? I go down to his office, and I say to Eric, "Hey, you're not going to believe this. George Whitesides let me in." And, Eric so, very calmly looks up and said, "I guess you're going to Harvard." And then, there's more to it than that. But he basically says that. And at that point, I woke up and realized, this guy, look what he did for me. And I met one of my best friends in George Whitesides as a result of it.
So you get into George Whiteside's lab, and at that point, you could have easily just become Professor Carmichael Roberts, right? And chemistry was something that interested you on the face of it, right? You enjoyed the process, you enjoyed the learning. In other words, it wasn't necessarily that you saw a fortune attached to it, right?
No, just the opposite. I had, I think there were a lot of other jobs. I know for a fact there were a lot of other jobs I could have done other than chemistry and professor and so forth. And but it was my passion, and I would say to tie it into what I'm doing right now is something about making things, and a lot of different things in hard science, as you said, tough tech, that you could develop to make things. But materials make things. Things are made out of stuff. And so that whole idea of making stuff, that's what I loved. The part that I loved was like using chemistry and material science to make products.
And of course, that's what George Whitesides does. He's an entrepreneurial academic, right?
Oh, yeah.
Which is a lot of people at Harvard and MIT have, several side hustles going.
Right.
And so how did you get kind of wrapped up into that idea of innovating ideas and ultimately companies with him?
So there was this moment where George sort of looked at me and he said, look, I've seen you do enough research that you're going to be fine. I want you to get exposed a little more to small companies, especially. You're in Boston. So I appreciate North Carolina, but it's not like what we got going on in Boston. I want to introduce you to a community. And George, who's about a little over 30 years older than me, is part of a group that I would say effectively created biotechnology in the United States. When you look at his group of 30 or 40 scientists across the U.S., and they used to work together on things more than people would know. They were responsible for companies like Amgen, Genentech, Biogen, Genzyme, a lot of these notable companies. And so he had a tremendous amount of contacts in both entrepreneurial communities, but also venture capital, which I didn't even know what it really was at that point in time. And so he said, I want you to go out and I want you to meet these people. And they're going to be a network. It's really important for you to network with these folks. And when you go be a professor, wherever you may be, my network is your network. So I want you to spend some time doing that in addition to working till 1 o'clock in the morning, getting those experiments done.
So at this point, though, you're still thinking professor. Did you have a moment where you realized maybe an academic career is not the way to go?
Yeah, so I had a National Science Foundation fellowship, which had like 3 to 4 years of do whatever you want, and the George Whitesides group, plus money to be an assistant professor as part of it. Plus, it's a prestigious enough thing that it kind of helps mint you. There were 30 of us in the U.S. at that point in time. And so I think I was just naturally getting pulled in that direction until I did what George said and went out and talked to people. And what they began to tell me, disturbed me, to be honest with you, that in terms of what they were encouraging me to do as an academic, and more importantly, what they said to me, don't do that because we'll never be able to start companies and build businesses in that. And the message that I had gotten was, hey, if you're going to do this deep science, tough tech things, focus on biotech, which I actually think is really important. But then when I talked about stuff like food and agriculture, and I've got here I've got a couple of people I work really closely with and things like water, and other things that keep the world healthy, fed, safe, warm, secure, powered stuff. Now climate's a word. Climate wasn't a word then. But I could feel that there was just, what has this country in the U.S. been built on? So much industrial stuff. But what I was being told was, venture capitalists are not going to put money into that, and entrepreneurs are not going to go into those areas. So if you develop these things in your lab one day, they may just end up sitting on the shelf. And see, that scared me, that mortified me.
Well, that would be a terrible shame, right? And certainly that's not in the philosophy or in the doesn't honor Edison in any way, right? Big ideas should come out of the lab.
Right.
So you saw that moment there. Was that the moment when you thought you wanted to be more on the business side of things and taking your knowledge that you developed in the lab and sort of communicating that using your range to the world?
Yeah, so I would say I like challenges. I think most of us like challenge. I really like the challenge when someone tells me, go left again. Do you go left, right, price is right? Which thing do you do in that particular case? And when it doesn't make any sense, and this is still true today, when the fundamentals don't make any sense, when you look at the fundamentals and what people are saying doesn't match up, and you sort of feel the not very thoughtfulness going into what's being said, there's an opportunity. And so I looked a little more carefully at that. And by the way, Eric turned out to be right about, I'm not going to be the smartest person in George's lab. I'm okay with saying, I'm comfortable with that, because I can tell you some of them who were the smartest people were some of my closest friends. Oh, they're some of the smartest people on the planet today. I mean, I won't name the names, but they are amazing. So those 5 people, I realized, I'm not going to be you in that regard. But they would turn to me and say, and we can't be you. There's something about you. And George would say this too, and Eric would say, like, it's something about you and your ability to translate. You call it range. That's the first time I had somebody use that terminology, but the ability to go. I'm going to use it now, Miles. Miles, this is my thing now, range. So
small commission.
Yeah, no, you got it. So the range, and also the ability, so the ability to be very fluent in whatever the sciences or the engineering language was, the ability to talk to people in the business community, the ability to talk and understand the customer, whoever the customer was, and to make a solid argument around things. I do think that's Edison innovation, by the way. And I could feel that in myself, and I could feel the scarcity in the equation. As much as it would have been great for me to be another professor, especially based on my ethnicity, then it becomes even more rare. It was even more scarce in the equation, forget about ethnicity, gender, or otherwise. Me moving into that role to fill the gap that they were saying was missing.
Well, this is a thread that's gone through all our talks today, starting with Bracken, going through Irvin, this idea that people who are technologists, scientists, are not always great at telling their story. And that's obviously, that's a sweet spot for you. You understand the technicalities, but you have an ability to relate it to a broader audience. That's not something that gets taught in school very well, does it? That's either you sort of have it or you don't?
Well, I think somewhere in between. I think, I think we all can be fortunate enough to have it, whatever the it may be. In one case, maybe storytelling. It could be science. It could be that you can. By the way, I got one of my cohorts here for the Latimer Fellowship who has a world record in the broad jump. So I can practice all I want and stretch and everything. I can't jump as far as Byron.
It's not going to happen
right now.
Yeah.
But there's certain things that you're just going to have. But I would say, but that's not enough. And also, if you don't have it to that degree, if you work really hard and you can kind of figure out how to hone your craft, you can also improve storytelling. So I've watched people. You're right. I mean, we do a terrible job. And it's such an important piece of, Edison was great at this, right? We do a terrible job at storytelling. And John Cropper talks about this quite a bit to me. We'll hear a little bit John talk. And I did have naturally the storytelling not like you, Miles.
Well,
but I
don't have the chemistry.
You have the voice though. I got to get that voice here. But I had the storytelling part, piece that was important in addition to the other pieces, I think.
So as a VC, I'm skipping one step though. You did start a few companies with George.
Oh yeah.
And so you had some time as an entrepreneur doing startups, running that kind of thing. Was that something you were comfortable with? Did you think you'd keep doing that, or at what point did you realize, I actually want to have a lot of irons in the fire and bring along a lot of companies?
Yeah, well, that took a little while. So the first thing I did is learn, and I got taught by lots of folks, some great CEOs. I took the mantle of when someone said we can't do this, hard tech, deep tech stuff and build companies.
I'm not leaving you. I'm just going out for questions. Keep going.
No problem. I took the mantle up, and the first half of my career was learning how to be an entrepreneur, a startup person. Eventually, I was a CEO of 3 different companies. I'm going to fast forward. And then I backed into venture because I thought, it would be a really good platform for me to go and try and teach other people how to do what I learned how to do. And I realized there was still a scarcity in the equation of having more people who could translate and have range, as Miles would say. So I'm a range developer now. I'm a Range Rover.
So you end up with your own fund. It's Material Impact, and it goes to your ideas of going after big problems, right? And was that a hard transition for you to get in that space? I mean, in the VC community, I suspect there aren't many people that look like you.
Right. No, your suspicions are correct. They are, correct. That's right. So yeah, I think first of all, the topic of, today we know that working on topics like climate and women's health, food, water, ag, these things, this is what everybody wants to do today. 10 years ago, that wasn't even the case whatsoever. And so then starting a fund, trying to do something that other people don't really want to do, that's hard in itself, independent of whether folks look like I do or not. And then on top of that, you add the layer that if you so to say, this guy Carmichael showing up to try and do this, and you haven't met me before, most people wouldn't expect someone that looks like me to walk through the front door. So yeah, I think all of that is non-trivial, but obviously doable.
Any questions out here in the audience? I am here for that purpose. Let me ask you this. The money that is, the VC money that is looking for big problems, that number is getting bigger. Why is that?
Well,
is it because they're all following you?
No. So I wish that were the case. So let me just say, when you think about climate, I'd be remiss. So I've got material impact, and I got to talk about breakthrough energy ventures, where I would give a ton of credit to there's a whole group of people I'm biased, but I would put Bill Gates really high on that list of we need to solve this problem, and it's going to take a lot of cooperation and capital. And so I think what you're starting to see now are large companies, high net worth folks, institutions all starting to put money in, and that's largely because they're trying to follow the entrepreneurs towards the most important problems. And so lots of capital now coming around the deeper science, tough tech things, I don't think because people want to necessarily just follow me, but I think there's a whole army, entourage, a movement going on right now around it.
And we have all your family and friends in the audience. Not a question or a comment for them? Nobody wants to say a thing?
Oh, you got one?
Huh? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, we got one over here. All right, let's do this.
Oh, no.
Let's do this young lady over here. All right, go ahead.
Hi, Dad.
Hi, Jaden. That's why I said, oh, no.
So, in what way did you grow in recent years personally, not just as a black man, but as a full-rounded person in your business life, especially since in the past couple of years, your business life, I've seen it, your business life has changed exponentially to look completely different. So in what way have you grown personally as a person?
Yeah, that's a great question for
great question, and you should be proud of
daughter.
this young lady. Yeah,
I'm proud that she asked the question.
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
because she and I we talk about, so she knows in general the answer. So I would say, one way I've grown to actually be a lot more comfortable. Even I'm a pretty comfortable person, but I'd say the relaxed nature that I've got right now and who I am and what I do, I think has come from this whole working with all sorts of people from all around and kind of seeing society as a whole move towards where I've always been and trying to solve big problems. So from the standpoint of how I've personally grown, I just tremendously relaxed in what I'm doing.
Any other family members? Oh, is this a sister?
Hi, Dad, part 2. Well, I want to give you an opportunity because a lot of people don't know that my dad is interested in a lot of stuff outside of just the business stuff. I want to give you the opportunity to talk about some stuff you're passionate about and work on outside of just breakthrough energy and material impact and stuff that you're working on, maybe writing some articles,
yeah,
et cetera, et cetera.
So one, I think I know exactly what my daughter Alex is talking about. So one of my passions I think is very, very important. I got a few of them, but I think the concept of mental health is huge. And there's not anybody in this audience, either on your own or one or two derivatives away, who can't see the impact of mental health, which has only gotten even more obvious from the pandemic. And so I'm on university boards, I'm on large hospital boards, and people sort of see me as this climate change, innovative entrepreneur, and they ask me what I want to work on, and I say I'm willing to do work as long as you agree to one thing. I'll bring all the entrepreneurial stuff to the table, but you got to give me mental health as one of the other things that I'm really passionate about. So I find myself now learning and writing a lot about, and some of it will come out. And so my friends are going to be surprised, and my daughters know I'm doing this, but I'm working on a lot of stuff related to just mental health for everybody, K through 12, how we can change the way education is done in college, you know, how one can change, and even for adults, I think across the board, mental health is ignored too much.
It is ignored. It's a huge problem which we need to address. Question.
Yes, thank you. Carmichael is not my dad, so my question for you is, what have you seen has been one of the biggest failures of the venture capital community, either from your colleagues or maybe personally in your career?
The understanding of two things, thanks, Byron. The understanding of two things, I can answer that right away. One is, the word is venture capital, venture. And what I've found is people are looking to de-risk stuff too much and not really willing, and it gets to the second part of my question, the answer to the question, not really willing to embrace the venture part, which is what the community, which is what the category was created for. But the second reason, which is part of the second answer, which is a failure that I'm seeing change, not fast enough, is they understand that the journey with the entrepreneur is one in partnership. It's one in where there shouldn't be a difference between investor and management team and entrepreneur, where when things go bad, you want one of the first calls to come to you as a venture capitalist. You don't want so that partnership, understanding you're together is, you know, I know from being the entrepreneur on the other side, you know, is tremendously missing, and I'm disappointed about that. And, you know, I can look out again at a couple of my, I see some CEOs and founders and stuff who know how passionate I am. I'm looking at two of them right now, Cody Yu and Utma as well, and how passionate, I can look right here, my two young ones from Infinite Cooling, how passionate I am about that. Venture capital, Byron, fails in that big time, having true partnership with an understanding that you're supposed to build, and not just give someone money.
Question here.
Hey, Dad. Keeping the train going.
Everybody's going to think I have a whole bunch of kids. That's it. I'm all done now.
There's only
How many kids do you have?
Three. I think Jane.
There are only three of us, I promise. All right. So, at the age of 18, right, already, I find myself practically drowning in my own curiosity, the desire to, do pretty much. My desire to do things is far greater than my ability to actually achieve things in a 24-hour span of the day, right? I wanted to ask you, at what point do you know it's time to let something go, even if you're very passionate about it? And what are some examples of you reaching that point in your business life and maybe even outside of that?
Well, genetics is something else, because let me just tell you, I got the same problem today. It's genetics. So I hate to tell you so, but no, in all seriousness, I think it's about prioritization, not necessarily letting go. If you're very passionate about something and some things, I'm not a big believer you got to completely let it go, but I think you just have to prioritize as to which of those things that you put the most time into and when. And that's the real tricky thing, and I can tell you about that at home more.
Well, we should have had the whole family up here.
I mean, I feel like
Is anybody missing from the Roberts clan that wants to weigh in, you know? Anyway.
Yeah, thank God my wife didn't say anything.
Still time. Anyway, actually we are out of time, unfortunately. We could go on and on. Carmichael, what a treat. Thank you so much for sharing your story, and congratulations on getting the Edison Achievement Award. Well deserved.
Thank you so much, Miles. Thank you for everybody. And thank you. Yeah.
So we're going to take a quick break, 5 minutes. We're going to reset the stage. Carmichael, you stay put, because we're going to tell you all about the Latimer Fellowship awardees, and they're going to be here to tell you their story. You definitely don't want to miss that. Thank you for your time. We'll see you in a bit.